This is Agriculture Today. I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. Ahead of us this Wednesday, we start with Kansas State University and Washburn University School of Law professor Roger McEowen. He joins us for an Ag Law update where he provides information on the upcoming 74th Annual Kansas Income Tax Institute. Also ahead, K-State Associate Professor from the Animal Science and Industry Department, Jessie Vipham, and agricultural economics expert Dustin Pendell share about their latest grant and collaborative project that focuses on supporting the needs of small meat processing facilities across Kansas. Last but certainly not least, we are joined by K-State College of Veterinary Medicine beef cattle experts Brad White, Phillip Lancaster, and Brian Lubbers for this week's Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts. The experts address a listener's question regarding the best options for fenceline weaning. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are back now for our bi-monthly Ag Law update, and joining us is Roger McEowen. He is a Kansas State University and Washburn University School of Law Ag Law professor. So, Roger, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, Samantha.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on as well. And we're going to be talking today about the 74th Annual Kansas Income Tax Institute, which you have been a part of for a number of years now. But tell us a bit about this program.
Yeah, in fact, I think this is my 30th year leading up these tax schools, but this is a long-standing program of extension at Kansas State. It might be the biggest program that K-State Extension has. It's probably the longest-running one. I'm just not familiar with anything else that's like these. And they've really kind of changed over the years. I've had a chance to look at some of the original books back in the 1940s, and given the relative simplicity of the code then, the schools will look to me to be a lot simpler than they are now. But we have a very complex tax code, and these schools are designed for practitioners in the rural areas as well as small firms. And we get people from large firms and the big four CPA firms that attend these schools. So it really covers a wide array of practitioners. And some of the data I saw a number of years ago was that about 95% of all farm income tax returns are scheduled out was prepared by someone in Kansas, was prepared by someone that had gone through these schools. So the impact of these schools are huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned some of the key audience members that you guys expect and put together this program for, and it's tax professionals, attorneys, and even producers if they're interested in learning more about how the taxes work behind the scenes of things. But it's also a continuing education opportunity, right? That's
right. Yeah, we do get some farmers and ranchers and those that are keeping the books and trying to do the taxes for those. So it's not just professionals. Now, granted, the vast majority are tax professionals that attend. And it is detailed training, but we do also get some others that are not tax professionals that attend it. And for those that are interested in continuing education credit, this is eligible for 16 continuing professional education credits for accountants, as well as 16 continuing legal education hours for attorneys, and 15 hours of credit for enrolled agents and OTRPs and CFPs, and 6 hours of real estate credit that's also available.
Wow, excellent. So numerous opportunities for many different groups. And in terms of what we can expect this year, you guys have some great speakers outlined and also some obviously phenomenal topics that are going to be covered. So what are some of those?
Yeah, for the two online seminars, Paul Neefer, who is a CPA out of the state of Washington, out of the Walla Walla office at Cliff and Larson Allen, he and I handled day one of the first online seminar. And then we also do day one out west in Garden City and Hayes. And then I do day two at every location with Kathy Murphy. Many people will know the name Ross Furs. Ross was retired IRS and did the tax schools with me for, probably 20 years while he was still with IRS and then after he retired. And he finally said that he told me last year he didn't want to do them anymore. He wanted to spend more time with his grandchildren, which I fully understand. And so Kathy Murphy is going to be with me on day two instead of Ross this year, and people will enjoy Kathy. She's also retired IRS, but she still practices. She has a tax office over in the St. Louis area. She'll be making the tour of the tax schools with me, teaching day two at every location except Pittsburgh. She won't be in Pittsburgh. But we may have an IRS Criminal Investigation Division person from Memphis join us in Pittsburgh. I can't say for sure yet. And then also on day 2 will be Professor Ed Morse, who is a tax professor at Creighton Law School. Those who attended last year on 5 of the locations got to hear Professor Morse. He's very well recognized, a great speaker, and gives a really great presentation on his topics. So that'll be day 2 at the locations other than just the ones out west, Garden City, Colby, and the first online seminar. He'll be on the rest of them on day 1. And then at every location, Carl York with the Kansas Department of Revenue will make an hour-long presentation right after lunch at each location plus the 2 online schools. And this is a year that he's got a lot to talk about. The legislature did a lot of things with respect to Kansas tax last year. That is, some of it has already taken effect, some of it will be coming. He's going to be going all over those changes and explaining the new forms that are out and what the issues are and what practitioners need to be looking for. So this is a really good year for people to get up to speed on Kansas tax.
Absolutely, yeah. You mentioned quite a few of the locations that this will cover and the fact that it's a 2-day program that each of these locations will have. So some of those online, like you mentioned, so that first date available for this programming is going to be October 31st and November 1st online over Zoom. November 7th and 8th, you guys are going to be at Garden City. November 9th and 10th, Hayes. November 21st and 22nd, Lawrence. November 28th and 29th, Salina. December 8th and 9th, Wichita. December 14th and 15th, Pittsburgh, December 19th and 20th, online over Zoom again to wrap things up. And, of course, if listeners are tuning in and they're interested in, I just rambled all of those off very quickly, but if you're interested in seeing a detailed schedule and registering, of course, which is key for these events and getting numbers and things like that, you can do that on agmanager.info, but, of course, that will be linked in the show notes of today's program. But, Roger, we really just want to encourage those that are interested to really attend this year, right?
Yeah, there's always changes in the tax code. Of course, we had a number of changes made in some recent legislation that came through the Congress, but also at the state level, this is a big year for that. And when people look on the Ag Manager link that they can find when they go to Ag Manager, they'll see the topics that we're covering and the subtopics on a daily basis. And a person can register for one day or both days, and if they only are looking for certain types of instruction on topics, then they can kind of pick and choose a la carte style for those particular days. But again, we think it's a pretty high-level instruction at each of these locations, and it is, because it's run through extension, it is pretty economical in terms of continuing education credit rates, pretty economical education for people to pick up their credits.
Absolutely, yeah, and a chance to get to learn from experts like those that you mentioned previously, ones that are dealing with these topics every single day.
That's right. We have our hands in this stuff every day, year-round, and it seems like it never stops. And so we try to give not only present the materials, but answer questions as we go through, and also for those attendees, they get access to us as speakers and can ask questions throughout the year. I would also point out there will be an ethics session on December 16, 2 hours of ethics for the tax ethics for those who need those. That will be run through Washburn Law School, but there'll be a break on price for those that attended the tax schools.
Excellent. Yeah, good to know for sure. And I know that you guys have outlines, obviously, of all the topics you're going to be covering each day of this program and each location, but you encourage those attending to look into those topics and prepare questions beforehand if they have the chance?
Well, at least look into the topics. Because you can see on a detailed basis, we break it down into subtopics as to what we're going to be covering. So if you've got particular questions, sure, if people have questions, they want to frame those in advance and ask us. We're glad to try to deal with those and get those answered, or at least give us a heads up of, you want to talk to us at the event, you've got these types of questions, we'll be glad to work that in.
Absolutely, yeah. So just a quick rundown again of those dates that people can expect for this program. It's going to be October 31st and November 1st online over Zoom, November 7th and 8th in Garden City, November 9th and 10th in Hayes, November 21st and 22nd in Lawrence, November 28th and 29th in Salina, December 8th and 9th in Wichita, December 14th and 15th in Pittsburgh, and then rounding out programming on December 19th and 20th online again over Zoom to conclude this year's programming. But as always, Roger, we thank you so much for your time today and for previewing this event with us.
Thank you, Samantha.
Absolutely. Once again, that was Roger McEowen. He is a Kansas State University and Washburn University School of Law Ag Law professor, previewing the upcoming 74th Annual Kansas Income Tax Institute and why you should register. Before we cut to a short break here momentarily, a preview of what's to come still on this Wednesday's programming. Ahead of us still, we have joining us K-State Associate Professor from the Animal Science and Industry Department, Jessie Vipham, and agricultural economics expert, Dustin Pendell. They share with us their latest grant and collaborative project that includes collaboration not only within different colleges within the university here at K-State, but also outside of the university as well. They share details about this project that is really focusing on supporting the needs of small meat processing facilities across Kansas and their goals, which include 5 town hall meetings that will be held across the state, internship programs involving business students within the university, and programs to really meet the needs of these valuable but diverse businesses that contribute greatly to these communities and beyond. Also ahead still, we have last but certainly not least, our K-State College of Veterinary Medicine beef cattle experts, Brad White, Phillip Lancaster, and Brian Lubbers, joining us for this week's Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts. In this week's segment, the experts address a listener's question regarding the best options for Fenceline weaning. Phillip Lancaster and Brian Lubbers go head-to-head in the battle for giving the best advice regarding this subject, and they don't disappoint. Also, a friendly reminder, if you're a radio listener and you're thinking, I still want to catch these later segments, but I don't have the time to listen now, please don't forget that we are also available as a podcast, which can be found on any podcasting platform, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and beyond those. And we can also be found online as well on our website, which is agtoday.net. So you can simply search for the program for today's date, September 14th, and you will find the rest of our segments for this programming. But like I mentioned, we're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are back now. We are going to be covering the fact that Kansas State University has received a grant to help support small meat processors in the state. And spearheading that grant, we have with us 2 of the individuals that are a part of it. We have with us Jessie Vipham. She's an associate professor in the K-State Department of Animal Sciences and Industry. And Dustin Pendell, he's a K-State ag economist. So thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So like I previously mentioned, we're going to be talking about a grant that you guys have recently received to help support small meat processors in Kansas. So tell us a little bit about this grant.
So I think that the purpose of this grant really is to try to alleviate some of the stress that small meat processors sort of went through as a part of COVID. COVID maybe exasperated the issue a bit. They definitely had the ceiling kind of come down on them in terms of people needing somewhere to take animals during COVID, and with some of the issues that had happened from a larger processing facility perspective, just in terms of workforce. And so that's where I think that we really stepped back and said, okay, what do we really know about small meat processing in Kansas, as well as what are some of the capacity development needs that they might have to help them meet some of this new demand within the area. And so I think that that's where a lot of the motivation for the grant came from.
The grant is funded, this is actually a Kansas State University funded grant through the Global Food Systems. And we had 5 main objectives that we're looking at in this proposal, and that is to understand the needs and business environments, constraints and the opportunities for these very small meat processors that might be thinking about expanding, looking at the economic resiliency and food security of these communities, and then implementing food safety practices, programs that might meet inspection requirements, and then finally looking at the entrepreneurship opportunities for these small and very small meat processing plants by looking at using Kansas State University students that will also collaborate and help in this project.
And from what I understand, this project, you mentioned obviously K-State is going to be a big part of it, but there's partners that lie within the university in different departments even, but also outside of the university as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the big components of the Global Food System Initiative at K-State is to pull together different departments and colleges within K-State to work together on some of the issues that they see for Kansas in terms of food systems. And so when we initially were talking about it, it made a lot of sense for animal sciences and industry to work with ag economics, as well as then to kind of move out into the business school, which is outside of the College of Ag, to kind of go, okay, how do these different groups really help to understand, what might be the issue in terms of some of the challenges that small processors are meeting, and then what are some opportunities that we see, right? We don't want to just put it as a challenge perspective. And then I think when we got into discussions, it became so clear that this really had to do in part with them understanding how to grow their business, being met with opportunities to develop skills, to communicate about what some of the needs that they have are, but also what are some of the regulatory components that come along with this. And so I think it became very obvious at that point in time that we needed a partner in the state of Kansas that really understood those components. And it then was very simple for us to kind of find our way to the Kansas Department of Agriculture, as well as the Kansas Small Business and Development Center, so SBDC. And so those two entities became partners because of their good work already in this space. If you look at what happened during COVID, right, and some of the increase in demand, you also saw an increase in the activities that those groups were doing. There's also in the state of Kansas Meat Processor Association, and they're really kind of the headship of the network for some of these small meat processors that we see across the state. Again, it became kind of obvious that that's a great partner to have, and we're very lucky that all three of them agreed.
Absolutely. Sounds like a match made in heaven for everybody involved. So it sounds like a great team. Yeah. I'm sure everybody involved is really excited to get this spearheaded and going. And I know a lot of work has gone into it. And some of that work has to do specifically with a few of the goals that you guys have with this grant money that you have received. And one of those is going to be a few town hall meetings that you guys are putting together that are going to be held across the state. Tell us a little bit about those.
We do have them set finally. And so just really quickly, I think for listeners, we do want to highlight what the dates of these town halls are. And so all town halls will be held from 5:30 to 7:30. We're going to start with the first one, which is here in Manhattan at the Kansas Department of Agriculture, and we're going to host that on September 23rd. The next one will be in Colby, Kansas, which is going to actually be held at the City Limits Convention Center, and that will be on October 3rd. And then from there, we will go to Wichita, which is October 4th, which is going to be held at Wichita State University. We're then going to head to Garden City, Kansas, which is going to be on October 5th. And that will be held at the Kansas State Research and Extension Center. And our final town hall will be held in Parsons on October 13th at the K-State Research and Extension Center. So if you are a small meat processor and you want to come, those are the dates.
Excellent. And then in terms of showing up to these meetings, is there any registering that needs to be done, or can people just show up as they're able to attend?
We want people just to show up, but ideally we could at least get a head count, because we will be providing food and drinks and stuff, and so we will need a head count. That way we can get an accurate amount of food to be ordered.
And we do have a registration that is going around. We have 5 announcements, and so we're happy to share those announcements with you, and you can push them out through your channels. And so anyone who is interested in an announcement with a link, let us know. We're happy to send it your way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once I receive those from you guys, I'll make sure they're in the show notes of today's program so that listeners can go to agtoday.net and easily find those there. But also in terms of some of the work that's going to be done through this grant, you're calling them food safety roadmaps. So these are really going to help facilitate the growth of these processors. So tell us a little bit about that.
When Dustin and I and Rachel had sat down to talk about this, we kind of envisioned things a bit differently. And I think that Dustin would agree with me. When the news of this project came out, we were surprised by the level of interest. And that was a good thing. We really see that as a positive thing. But I think based upon that, it has maybe shifted some of our thought process. And so I think one of the ones that is shifting is these food safety plans for facilities. And one of the things I think we've become very interested in is that we are seeing, just from certain types of feedback, is that lots of small meat processors around Kansas use a multitude of business models. So they're not just a slaughter facility, or they're not just a processing facility. Sometimes they are, but we also see a lot of them that have retail cases. We see a lot of them that have a slaughter facility and a restaurant. And so there's a lot of different business models that they have. And it's become kind of clear to us that maybe what makes the most sense is actually to start to develop some programs for some of those business models. And so I do think that we are interested in doing the food safety program. It's obviously still a part of the goal, but I think initially we had thought about it from the perspective of meeting individual facilities and talking to them about their programs, but that maybe there's more breadth to us taking a step back and saying, we want to work with small meat processors to understand their business models, and then with them collaborate to find a way in which we can create some form of very usable documents that then help them to create their own programs.
Absolutely, yeah. So that definitely ropes in the entrepreneurship side of things, Dustin, that you mentioned earlier. So that shows how much this program has really expanded just from what you originally thought. What an opportunity, for sure.
Yes, no, absolutely. And as Jessie pointed out, she kept saying when we started thinking about this, that must have been back in February, to where we are today, town halls are going to be critical for us. We want to just sit, listen, take notes, try to learn and understand what their challenges, what their opportunities are, figure out exactly what those issues are, and how we can better design programs that will help them, including working with students over in the College of Business next spring. The envision is that we'll work with some of these entrepreneurs in internships, or you think of maybe as consultants, right? Developing either business plans or various kinds of feasibility studies with these, entrepreneurs, these people who might want to get into business or might want to expand their business. And so there's a lot of great things that are going on and a lot of moving parts, and they're moving very quickly, and we're shifting just to kind of try to keep up with everything.
Yeah, that internship program is definitely going to be something interesting to follow. I'm sure I'll follow up with you guys in the spring once those are underway and maybe meet with some of your students. But what an opportunity not only for students to learn, but also for these small businesses that you're going to be connecting with to learn from the students as well.
No, absolutely. And I think bring students to campus, and we're always trying to get them real world experiences, right? This is an outstanding, an excellent opportunity of just that, right? We're getting these students, we're getting them out in the field or out in their areas of study, and they get to see firsthand of what it's like to run a business, trying to expand or maybe start a business. And so I think it's going to be a really great experience for the students, but also it's really going to be a good experience for those entrepreneurs as well to work side by side with K-State students and K-State faculty to hopefully help them achieve their goals.
I look forward to see all that this grant accomplishes and all of the work that you guys have put into it so far come to fruition. So thank you guys so much for your time today and chatting about this program.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Once again, that was Jessie Vipham. She's an associate professor in the K-State Department of Animal Sciences and Industry, as well as Dustin Pendell. He is a K-State ag economist, sharing about their small meat processor grant that they're hoping to utilize to help support those businesses here in Kansas. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are rounding out today's programming with our Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts segment. And this week we are joined by beef cattle experts Brad White, Phillip Lancaster, and Brian Lubbers.
Hi, welcome to Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts. I'm Brad White, and with me today is Dr. Phillip Lancaster, beef nutritionist here at Kansas State.
Hi, Brad.
And Dr. Brian Lubbers, who does food animal therapeutics here at Kansas State.
Hi, Brad.
On BCI Ask the Experts, we find the right experts to answer your beef production questions. If you'd like to ask us a question, you can send us an email at bci@ksu.edu with Ask the Experts in the subject line. Our format is I'll ask each expert the same listener question, and they have a chance to provide input and respond to each other's comments. Based on their response, they'll receive points with a maximum of 10 points available. This question from a listener is, I've heard about Fenceline weaning. I'm thinking about trying it. What is the best option, barbed wire, electric, or high tensile? Brian, you want to go first?
We talked about Fenceline weaning on a podcast recently, And I think you made a really good point. The calves are going to get through it. And it really doesn't matter what kind of fence you have. So I will say it depends. And I know I'm going to lose points for that answer, but I'd rather have the listeners get the right answer. The type of fence depends on what your situation is. If you are wanting to move the cows to a different pasture and we're talking about a mile of fence, or if we're going to do something that's more of a temporary, just to wean, put the calves in a small lot, maybe a few hundred yards of fence, I think the answer might be different. My preference is barbed wire.
So even after the it depends, he came back with a barbed wire answer. So we'll give Brian 7 points. Phillip, it's on you.
Well, I'm going to go with the combination. If we really want to try to keep those calves separate, I think a woven wire fence is a good way to go, and then maybe a single strand of electric wire on the inside to keep them from rubbing on the fence and pushing on the fence. And I think that will probably give you the best chance of not having any calves get through it other than a solid wall. That's what I'm going to go with.
Okay, excellent. So a woven wire with electric inside it. So now I'm going to ask a follow-up question. And Phillip gave a good answer too, but Brian, I'm going to, even with your it depends, I'm going to have you have the lead here. Phillip's got 6 points. So your follow-up question is, if that's the fencing opportunity for the calves there, what do I do to make sure or make it easy to keep the cows away from those calves?
I would say moving feed and water sources away from the fence line is good. If you don't give the cows a reason to hang around, and they will for, probably 24 to 36 hours, they'll want to be with the calves, but eventually they'll kind of wander off. And if you don't give them a reason to stay, they'll go out and they'll wander off, and that's my answer. So keep the feed and water sources away from the fence line.
Excellent. Phillip?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Brian. I think at the very beginning, you don't want to pull them away. The whole point is to have a gradual separation process. And if you're really pulling them away and they're not up there with the calves are going to walk and bawl more, and that's not reducing the stress level on those calves. So we want to have feed and water away from the fence, but not necessarily 2 miles away from the fence.
Absolutely. So you're gradually moving them away. And I think both of you came up with great options for all of them have high visibility through those fences. So solid fences aren't great for fence line weaning because you still get that visual contact with the calves. And then they start gradually moving away. Outside of fencing, any tips for fence line weaning? Brian?
Phillip gave a great answer, though. I think you want it to be a separation, but you want it to be a gradual process. And I think that's the key. No, other than that, I really don't. I mean, that's the big key.
I'll go from a nutrition standpoint that we want to gradually introduce them to feeds as well during that process. So give them something they're familiar with to begin with, like grass hay, and then slowly introduce new feeds on top of that grass hay so that transition is gradual as well.
Excellent point. So it's not just the social that we're managing with this fence line weaning. One of the other advantages, we're not putting them in a dry lot. They're still familiar with grass, and then we can bring them up on other feed. So really good comeback by Phillip there. Surpassed Brian. Ended up with 9 points based on that last answer and the one you couldn't answer, Brian. So thank you for joining us today, and we appreciate you sending in questions. If you'd like to hear more from our BCI experts, you can join us on the weekly BCI Cattle Chat podcast. And remember, to get your question answered, send us an email at bci@ksu.edu with BCI Ask the Experts in the subject line.
Once again, that was K-State College of Veterinary Medicine beef cattle experts Brad White, Phillip Lancaster, and Brian Lubbers for this week's Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts. We'll be back with more tomorrow on Agriculture Today.